interviewing a small mammal, apparently, and certainly not the creator of Apple TV's breakout hit, Shrink Next Door. Actually, I'm talking to the creator of that series. Ms. Pritchett, how you doing?
Very good. Well, actually, I say that I've got COVID, but being British, I still have to say I'm very well.
So you have COVID.
Yeah.
Yet you still want to talk to me. I can't imagine why you would want to do that in any way, shape, or form. I am far from that interesting, but I do appreciate you soldiering through. So I'm always interested in the writing process. So at the beginning, how did you come up with this concept for the show, and how did it kind of form? Did you map it out? Did you know who you wanted to cast? Stage is yours.
Well, so I was a huge fan of the podcast and thought that was brilliant. And Will Ferrell was a big fan of the podcast and tried to get the rights for it and was competing with Paul Rudd, who had heard the podcast and was trying to get the rights for it. And in the end, they joined forces because Will wanted to play Marty and Paul wanted to play Ike. So it arrived as this brilliantly cast, fantastically exciting project. And I couldn't think of better cast for those parts. They were absolutely perfect.
But you get a little known actress to kind of play a big part in the story, Kathryn Hahn. I don't know if you've heard of her before. I mean, how did you luck into that?
Well, it's funny. I talked with Will and Paul about who could be Phyllis, because she's such an incredible character, and all three of us said Kathryn Hahn, and we were just so thrilled when she agreed. And she absolutely. I've met the real Marty and Phyllis many times, and she completely embodies the real Phyllis, who's a fantastically feisty and strong woman.
I can't help but think about this while you were talking, and I have to know so I can get it out of my system, and we'll get back to where we need to be. Where do you put your Emmys? I always love to know this. Go ahead.
In a cupboard.
They're in a cupboard?
In a cupboard, yeah. But look, in the background is the cow from the Shrink Next Door.
Oh my Lord! I did not notice that. To be quite transparent, I was kind of looking up to see if I could see one of them in the background, because I want to be honest. If I had 4 Emmys, it would literally be on that white table to your, I guess it'd be your right, possibly, and I would just have them lined up and like have a sign that says 4-time Emmy winner. I mean, but I guess that's not what you do when you've won 4 of those, or I imagined. So, but they're in a cupboard, huh? Do you have room for more? Because I think you're going to be adding to them in the near future. Just a hunch.
Maybe. My kids play with them. They're good toys.
Your kids play with the Emmys?
Yeah.
What do they do with them?
One of my sons uses it as well. He uses now I've stumbled into a terrible humble brag. He uses the Writers Guild Awards as like seats for his teddies, and my other son kind of pimped up one of the awards. He put Play-Doh on it, made it look kind of a bit more stylish. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So they want mom to get more play toys, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I say that I have 2 little ones myself, okay, and my youngest takes bottle caps and uses them as hats on his baby shark toy. Now, mind you, on his baby shark toy, he insists that my wife and I take turns putting socks on it. So obviously, you got to keep an inanimate object warm in the cool of night, apparently. So okay, you've satisfied my curiosity. Now you get Will on board, you get Paul on board, obviously, and Kathryn's on board.
Yeah.
How do you get Michael Showalter on board? Because I mean, this is like a dream team of people to come together. Because I actually just talked to this man yesterday about your particular show.
Yeah, Well, he was on board. He and Paul were together trying to get the rights. They wanted to work together again. And so, yeah, you're right. It was a fantastic team. And then Casey Wilson came on, and I hadn't worked with her. She's hilarious. So, yeah, it really was dream come true.
So, as someone who comes from your background, precise language, like on shows like Succession, you come into a situation like this where you've got Casey Wilson, you've got, Catherine Hahn, Paul Rudd, Will Ferrell, who are all very good at, let's say, going off in a different direction. Does that cause a writer to cringe, so to speak? Or you just accept the fact that they might just go off on a tangent?
Yes, I think, yeah, I totally embraced the fact that they would go off and, were bound to make my script look better with the stuff they made up. But yeah, they were a joy to write for. And I think what was exciting as well is, we've all come from a sort of mainly comedic background, but I think we were excited to kind of embrace the tragedy of this story, because it's a really, really tragic story. And so, although of course it was going to be funny with those people involved, I was, I wanted it to be moving and relatable and sad as well, because I think it's a really kind of extraordinary story of a relationship that started well and then went really wrong, and that's something we've all experienced to some degree or other.
I think with Will, we get lost in the fact that he's hysterical in any scenario. Paul, Catherine, on another level, Will's kind of here. They're close.
Yeah.
But what we don't understand is when it comes to drama, all three of them have something in common. They're really good at being expressive with their, in their face and their eyes.
Yeah.
So they express a lot just in their mannerisms when they're doing drama. And I think a lot of your piece comes through because sometimes what's not said is maybe a bit more powerful than what needs to be said. And I think that's why this elevates to a whole nother levels, because of the prowess that those three have, which is being expressive when it calls for it without necessarily filling the dead air with nonsense, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point. I think, I feel silly saying that I hadn't realized what a brilliant actor Will Ferrell is, but, I'd always found him so funny. I hadn't appreciated how fantastically nuanced he is as an actor. And I think this is one of the greatest performances of his career. He's so moving, and it's such a subtle performance. And exactly as you say, I think in writing and in life, there's more in what isn't said than what is said. And those actors conveyed all that so beautifully.
So how do you balance getting phone calls from Michael Showalter, Paul, and Will, and then on the other line you have to say, wait a second, Jesse's calling me? Because Michael, I love talking to him, but he's a pretty intense dude. And Jesse, by all intents and purposes, he seems to be pretty intense as well. The man pretty much threw his back out doing these projects. And Jesse, from what I understand, never stops. So, how do you balance those two things going on at the same time in your world? Because you seem to be someone who can kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, I feel very lucky. Jesse's someone I've known for, I would say, 30 years probably. We've worked, we're both British comedy writers. We've worked on some terrible shows together. We've worked on some good shows together. And it's, what's great about Succession is everyone involved is a delight, unlike the characters we're writing about. And that was true of Shrink Next Door as well. It was such a great atmosphere. It was such a great experience. And I felt very, I really wanted to write this because I didn't want to do one of those kind of true crime stories where it's victim and villain, goodie and baddie. I felt like this was more of a love story. This was, it's too reductive and too simple to say Marty's an idiot and Ike's evil. It felt to me like these were two very complicated men, and that we shouldn't sort of blame or judge either for their parts in what happened, and that it would be much more interesting to just kind of explore how it happened and why it happened, and not judge them, but just kind of try and accurately represent this really sad story that had this heartbreaking effect on all these people's lives.
You're going to have a problem coming real soon. And here's the problem. You're going to have a conflict of interest in categories. You're going to have, I'm not trying to jinx anything here, but let's just be honest. You're going to have people from both shows nominated, and they're going to be going up against one another. Is it a win-win for you, basically? Or do you pull for one over the other? Listen, I don't know how I would handle that. I would just probably shrug my shoulders and walk away. But how would you handle that?
I'll be delighted if they're all incredibly talented people, and I hope that their work gets recognized. I feel like I would love Will's sort of serious performance to get recognized, and Paul, indeed. He's normally the hero, and this is a guy who you quite often want to punch, and he's, it's a weird feeling when you feel angry towards Paul Rudd. So I think that's a pretty incredible performance. I'm very lucky to work with these incredible actors, and that's what's so exciting about being a script writer as opposed to any other type of writer, is that it is, it's a symbiotic relationship. You can't be a script writer without actors, and actors can't act without scripts. So it's like a marriage. It's like a love story itself. It can be incredible and it can be painful, and I've been very lucky to have some great experiences with just the best actors in the business who elevate anything I write into a whole different stratosphere.
Plus, you get invited to both after parties, the Apple and the HBO after party, I imagine. But we're going to end on a pretty complex question. Hate to do this to you, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
What is your favorite episode that you constructed this season for Shrink? What is your favorite episode you had a hand in, or you constructed, however you want to frame it, for Succession?
Good question. Okay. I think for Shrink, if I can cheat,
you could cheat.
I would probably say episodes 3 and 8, because 3 feels like a fun part. You're in the rom-com part of the relationship. There's the theatre, there's the fire in the theatre, there's stuff going on, there's the kind of Phyllis problem. A lot happens in that, and it feels like a funny episode. And then episode 8, of course, was very satisfying because you got to really get down to the sort of emotion of the story. Phyllis comes back, which is a joy because we've missed her as much as Marty has. And then with Succession, the first episode I wrote was a Thanksgiving episode, which I loved doing, was thrilling.
You wrote that episode?
Yeah.
Oh my God. An amazing episode is what you want to say. At least I'll say it, but go ahead.
Yeah, and well, it was exciting for me as a British fan of American TV, growing up watching Thanksgiving episodes, thinking, wow, this is like a real tradition of American shows. So it was exciting for me. And then in the second season, I wrote the one where Tom and Greg get stuck in the safe room, which was really fun. And then in the last season, I co-wrote 2 episodes, one of which, well, you can tell me, one of which was Kendall's birthday party. And at the time I thought, did I go too dark? Should we just have let tiny Wu-Tang Clan play and everyone be happy? But I don't know. It was a dark episode, but yeah, they were all fun.